Hey, morning, Breeder. General Williamson and team. Want to just share a couple of insights. I had a great opportunity to talk to some folks working or have work problems like ours, and wanted to throw some ideas at you just to get your juices going. What you're looking at right now is a picture, and you may remember this. This was General Stan McChrystal's picture of what he was up against when he was trying to understand Afghanistan. In 2007, I believe it was, he made a statement on TV where he said, "By the time I understand this, the war will be over." Well, I'm going to argue that we have a very similar kind of problem that we're working through. We're trying to visualize and understand. But of course, we're not really willing to wait a few years before we're going to be done. So we've got to get to an understanding as quickly as possible, and I want to talk a little bit about what our approaches are and how they fit. So one, I'm going to go to talk about when you're looking at this picture, what you could imagine is that each one of these could be the different PEOs. Then each one of these hubs over here could be each of the either the ARO, Army Research Office, or I could replace popular support with the ASALT, and I could replace population conditions and beliefs to trends, and I could look at the insurgents as being what NGIC is looking at in terms of what the bad guys are up to and what our competition is doing. And we could look at our coalition as being the other countries that we're relying on to execute science and technology that we won't. We'll allow them to do so. And as you can see, there's all these subcategories that would be right down to maybe things like UARCs or specific PMs, or even cross-service things like JSAP for small arms alike. But all those, as you can see, have very, very intricate relationships. And I would argue to you that we're dealing with the same thing. I would also tell you that while this picture is complex, you can actually start working with it once you start digging into it. And what's nice is you can impose some order on it that makes a senior leader able to work through this kind of problem and know what they're going to do. I'll tell you that, General McChrystal, I just wrapped up part of his book, and he did not see this problem so daunting that he didn't take it on and get at it. All right, that's a long piece on my part. First off, so we look at this. I'd like to share that when I'm looking at my approach to the problem set, as I've talked about, which out of the Aura approach, so it's going to take a second for it to come up. You can see I get the same level of complexity. Actually, this one has a little more order on it. The one that I normally show you all has significantly less order to it and looks a lot like the picture we just saw. And then what I've been doing up to now is placing some amount of order on it so that it forms up. I got programs and like, and they line up. And that is what I like about my approach that I push on, is that it gives the best replication we can of what the actual lay of the land is. It also allows us to do the analytics on it from the way the world is. So I can, as we've talked about before, I can grab things and remove them or keep them and the like, and then we can talk about time-based, where I move forward through time and this network shifts and changes. That would crush my computer if I ran it now, because it takes a lot of memory, so I'm not going to do that right now. What I've been really appreciative of what Nathan has broken the code on is the idea of the sharp cloud approach. And let me see if I can pull that up. And oops, just a moment. There we go. There we go. There we go, sharp cloud. Come on. Sorry for the delay there, I had to bring this slide up. But you remember this approach, I call it the sharp cloud approach. All we're really doing is imposing further structure on the data. Now the downside is it starts to not reflect the real world. The good news is that it reflects how people think that are operating this space not right now. So based on our best assessment, this is how senior leaders are thinking. Obviously, we'd like them to embrace the full complexity, but we've got to get them there. Now, when we look at the MITRE technology, which I really appreciate what they've done. Just a moment while I pull it up. There we go. You can see they pose even more structure. They see it totally as a hierarchy, where something is a subcomponent of another thing, is another thing, is another thing, and that is how I build the world. So you can see I've removed a lot of the recursive lines that we saw in McChrystal's picture and the network picture, and allowed it to act or appear to look, particularly in Palma's case, exactly like the system, that is the JCID system that it's trying to represent. Okay, downside is that we don't always seem to be using the JCID system. So we really want to actually represent the world the way it is, so we make decisions, we don't miss things that didn't fit in the system. However, the more that we can move over time to this type of a framework, what allows us to do, and it might take us a year or two to get to this kind of framework in terms of ontology, is allows us to run way more precise algorithms. That is, if the data actually reflects this picture of how things work, then the algorithms that run on this picture will be an accurate assessment of what we should do as leaders. So what we're actually operating in, and this is a picture of kind of the science. As I get excited, why am I love the problem set that we're working on. And the reason is because we're actually doing some very cutting edge stuff that the Army has kind of been avoiding. So typically the Army likes to say, way back here in terms of complexity theory, we're going to do systems theory, which it's a 1950s kind of thinking. Now it's been advanced a little bit with dynamic systems theory, which we need for what we're doing, because we know that we're working with dynamic nonlinear systems when we talk about the ASALT's portfolio. But as soon as I start talking about, say, a very structured Palma approach, then what I'm looking at is using systems theory and maybe some agent-based modeling. And then, however, what we'd like to do, and what is exciting about this problem set, is that we're moving over here to the idea that there's dynamics in the systems, there's complexity, and we should embrace that complexity, and we do that by moving from agent to multi-agent and computational modeling. And that goes as well, obviously, with the visualizations that we're using to express. So, as some say, don't try to remove the complexity, embrace it, or at least embrace it to the limit of what the leadership or the decision maker can absorb. So, I finished this by saying what I noticed when I reviewed McChrystal's book, I remember he looked at this complex idea, was he came back with these. And these are just chapters out of his book. He said, look, when I had to take this on, it was about being networked. We had a ticking clock. Anything I did mattered now, and it mattered in the future, but I had to do things now. And then he said, look, it's about design, decide, and execute. So I'd argue that where we are, Roger, we're thinking networked, and we understand that we're up against a ticking clock. We've got to move quickly. But here, right here, is where we've got to iterate. And we've got to iterate now. So I'd recommend as fast and as soon as we can, we get to a decision that we move out on this project and start getting to iterations that design, decide, and execute. Thanks.